Hey there, everyone, and thank you for listening to Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, the podcast talk show for parents. I'm Janice Robinson Celeste, your host and publisher of Successful Black Parenting Magazine. I want you to tell all of your friends and followers about the show. So go to our Facebook page for Successful Black Parenting and share the link with your followers right now. Let people know you're joining us. Even better, you can click the options and start a watch party. In addition, you can comment on Facebook right below where I'm speaking, and I will post the best comments live on air. And for those who are listening, I will read them aloud. And know that it can take a while for your questions to populate in the backstage area. So ask any questions early, so don't wait. And know that our hashtag for the show is hashtag BACKTALK. All right, so I look forward to seeing you guys posting. Now, my special guest for today is Leslie Ford, who is the founder of the group Maslows Hierarchy of Needs. And if you're a mom, you know we really need this podcast. So welcome, Leslie.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. Please tell us, what is Maslows Hierarchy of Needs? We want to know about that.
Absolutely. Well, it came actually out of a conversation I had with some colleagues that I was working with at the time. And they were both men. One was a dad. One was about to get married. And it came out, we were doing a lot of research into stress actually at the time. And they said, why are moms so stressed? And I was like, let me tell you. I'm like, how much time do you have? Let's sit down, let's talk about it. And I said, there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then there's mom's hierarchy of needs. And as soon as I said it, I just felt something like, wait a minute, what would it look like? I kind of drew it on a piece of paper. Later that night, I went home and put it into PowerPoint. And then I was really curious, would other moms define it the same way? Would they think of this in the way that I'm thinking of it? So I actually did a couple of surveys. I had close to 150 moms who responded. And, we moved things around and changed things and updated the descriptions. But I wanted to kind of reflect what's going on for a lot of us. Unlike Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is very linear, it's like, oh, I've got food, check. I've got shelter, check. I'm moving on to my next kind of bigger, more aspirational goal. But, if you notice at the bottom, a lot of the foundational things that we're prioritizing, for good reason, children's well-being, children's health and milestones, household, in the middle, you get up to the middle, career, volunteer responsibilities. Then, when you get to the tippy top, that's when you see self-care, learning, fun, personal growth, self-interest. And I think most of us, are, whether it's, we're wired or socially conditioned to want to believe that we have to do everything at the bottom, and that has to be done before we can reward ourselves with self-care or with the types of activities that, we love to do, or a chance to unwind. And, the work at the bottom is never done. So you kind of end up in this cycle where you find yourself never getting to the point of taking care of yourself. And so I got really curious about that. I had gone through a really severe period of burnout after my second was born. And I started this, now 3 years ago when she was almost 2. And at that point, I just wondered how other people were doing it. I was exhausted. I was never even someone who needed a lot of sleep. And I was just like, what are other women doing? What are other moms doing? How am I going to get through this? And it just really opened up this incredible conversation, I think, with other moms and even other parents, other dads as well, about what we're prioritizing and why it's so stressful, and what kind of steps can we take in our daily lives that make the journey more joyful and manageable.
Right. So let me ask you, how many children do you have?
2.
And what ages?
My daughter, so when she was almost 2 at the time, she just turned 5.
Oh, okay.
And so That's my little one. And my oldest, he recently turned 9.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's awesome. So you have a boy and a
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I always like to find out like about our parents and
Yeah.
their kids. Okay, so let's go back to this pyramid because if the listeners are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of need, basically like you said, it starts with like safety and food and shelter. You need all of this basic needs, all of these basic needs in order to what they call actualize. Now we learn about this in psychology class in college usually. So basically, to make it in this world, you have to climb the pyramid. Like, and when you get to the top, you've actualized, you made it. Basically, you can,
Yeah.
you're this well-rounded person. But you have to start with the bottom of the pyramid, which are basics like shelter and security. And that's why they say kids that don't have food or they don't have that secure home or homeless, they can't move up the pyramid to be successful because they don't have the basic needs at the bottom. You can't climb it if you don't have what you need first. So you
Exactly.
have at the bottom, if you guys can't see it that are listening, but you have the bottom of the pyramid as children's well-being and the children's activities. So let me ask you about that. So you kind of alluded to it. You
Yeah.
said that the children have to be taken care of first before mom can reach the top of the pyramid to have fun and take care of herself. So can you go into that a little bit more?
Absolutely. And, children's well-being. So interesting. I had all the children's like activities and well-being grouped together at first. And then a couple of moms are like, listen, getting to a doctor is very different than getting to a play date. and I do not prioritize them the same. And I was like, all right, fair enough. So I separated them, but, we want our kids to be healthy, happy, successful. We want them to meet all their developmental milestones. And, childcare, and I'm putting that in quotes, is not something that is ever done. We are always tending to our kids' needs. We are always spending time, even if we're not actively doing childcare or helping them with school or talking with them about what they need. We're thinking about it, and it's one of those things where our kids are they're vital, right? They're our hearts and souls. And you start to get into this, though, I think, false reality or false narrative in your own mind where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to take care of the kids. I have to take care of the house. I have to take care of my partner. I have to take care of my family. If your parents are at a stage of life where your parents are getting older, oh my God, I have to take care of my parents. And then it's so many women and so many moms that I've interviewed and have surveyed, they're skipping their workouts. They're not eating healthy. They're skipping doctor's appointments. They're getting depressed. They're getting anxious. They're feeling trapped. They're feeling like there's no way out. And that joy, that I think enthusiasm, and that balance that allows us to keep the energy going for the long-term race that is parenting, without some self-care, without putting those things into the mix, it's like you burn out. And I think that's a dangerous place for us, and it's a dangerous place for our kids.
Now, what about the philosophy of putting your oxygen mask on first and then putting your kids on? How does that play into this? And then I'm not talking about neglectful moms that only take care of themselves and the kids are looking raggedy. No, I'm not talking about those because we don't talk about them. We don't talk about them. But I'm talking about just taking care of yourself so that you can be there and be a good mom. What about that? How does that play into this?
I think that's a really great question. And it comes up a lot. And that analogy comes up a lot. I think that where that plays in is that instead of waiting until everything on the bottom of the pyramid is, done or finished, because these are things that are never finished, you give yourself permission to have space at the top, and you make that part of your plan A. And maybe it even has to be part of a plan B and a plan C, because we all know that you might have the best intentions to go for a run or to go for yoga or to, cook a great meal. And then, someone might throw up on you, or someone might, it's just like your whole plan can change in a heartbeat. So, it's not as if, I think we have a lot of the discretionary time that we do have which is pretty small, is very unpredictable. And that's part of the challenge. But the oxygen mask analogy, it's like, make it more predictable. Set aside your time. Like I run every single day. And I do that in the morning. My first choice is to do it before the kids wake up. Sometimes my little one will wake up long before she's supposed to wake up. So if that happens, I put her in the running stroller, and she comes with me. And it's a different kind of workout, but I still get my workout in. Journaling and meditation has become really important to me for clarity, making time for that in the mornings. And instead of cleaning at every counter and racing around the kitchen and spinning around the house and starting to do work email, like I carve out that space, and it makes me a better, more present, more clear, less stressed mom. And I show up for my kids differently. I also believe strongly that what we model for them is what they will internalize and take to their children and into their lives. So if they see us taking care of ourselves and prioritizing our health and our well-being and our learning and our growth, they're going to say, wow, okay, I'm seeing that that's important. So I'm going to plan to put a priority on that too.
Okay. So, when you started describing that and I started imagining your pyramid, it seems like your pyramid has steps, almost like the Mexican pyramids, like in Tulum, instead of the slick ones, it's layers, because, you're rid of a layer here, a layer there. You're kind of climbing your pyramid, and you can go up and you can come back down. So that's how I visualize. I'm a very visual person. So that's how I visualized it. Okay. So that's pretty interesting. So you don't have to stay on one level, that those levels are kind of continuous and interact with one another. I like that idea. I think that's pretty cool.
Exactly. So, go
ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, something you mentioned is interesting, that sometimes you slide back down. I think that's a really important piece, because it's not linear. Things happen, right? Something could go on in your family. I ran into a friend today. She's her child is having some health challenges, and so all of her energy and the family's energy is kind of focused there right now. And it's like, all right, things will come up, things will happen, things that you don't predict, that you don't plan. So it's okay, and it doesn't mean that it's like people should not feel judged or guilty about self-care being yet another bar that we have to meet. It's like, it's aspirational. It should be an important part of how we think about our time, but it's not going to work out necessarily every day, right? Or every week.
Right. But what happens to moms that put all of their energy into their family and totally just neglect themselves? What happens to most people? What have you found?
Yeah. They're unhappy. And by deeply unhappy. There are surveys where I've had people, I get sometimes, the two big studies that I've done, one was on the mental load for moms and how that plays out in day-to-day life. The other big one was on personal boundaries. Why do we set them? Why don't we set them? Why do we feel so guilty about setting them? And our personal boundary is really the antidote, right, to overdo and overwhelm, which is where most moms live. But, what happens, it becomes corrosive. Moms are increasingly depressed, increasingly anxious. Moms are at greater risk for a lot of very, stress-induced negative health conditions, like, heart disease. There's a fairly, high blood pressure. It's frightening. And when I hear women express themselves, it's like, I've heard people say and it's not even just once. It's like, I feel like I want to die. I feel like the walls are closing in on me. I'm having trouble breathing. I can't sleep. I need, half a bottle of wine to go to bed. This is like rippling into people's lives in, I think, really scary ways. And I think as a culture, even if as a mom, right, I'm very invested in this, but even as a culture, like, we need to care about our caregivers. And it's a continuing conversation that work that seems invisible to everybody else, work that is, uncompensated or unpaid work, is often the work that's undervalued and dismissed in our society. And moms are working their tails off, and moms are putting so much into their families and into keeping things afloat. And if they don't have the opportunity for some self-care or learning or growth, and self-care doesn't look the same for everybody, that just kind of dampens the spirit, and people start to feel really crushed by it.
Right. And you mentioned they're not happy if they don't take care of themselves for long periods of time. But one of the things you mentioned that you do, you said you journal and you meditate. And it's something about people that meditate. They have this aura of peace about them. I don't get it. You have that too. I don't get it.
I work for it.
I'm going to meditate. I used to only use meditation to keep my kids quiet in the back seat and tell them to meditate. They'll tell you this. Today you asked them about this story. They'll tell you how much they told me I don't like to meditate. So, but
I've been trying. Exactly. Well, I've been trying to get my son to do it, and it's very inconsistent. But I have been trying to teach my children how to do it. But yeah, it's been a big thing for me, and just kind of pausing, being quiet. Being alone, that's it's funny. It's not a coincidence. Every survey I've done, when I ask moms, what do they do to unwind? What does make them happy? How do they de-stress? It's like the overwhelming majority of the activities are things that you do by yourself, right? So it's
hard to do. You can't even go to the bathroom without somebody knocking on the door, peeping under the door. Yeah,
exactly.
That's hard to do as mom. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh yeah, there's like no privacy. My kids will still like, hey mom, it's like, go to the bathroom, honey. Can we just wait? So yeah, it's that. It's having a chance to take some time just to clear your head, to think a thought. To take a breath, and also, frankly, to not be needed. We're needed a lot, and it's beautiful in many ways. I mean, I'm honored by it. I always really wanted to be a mom. It was a hard journey for me. It's the best, most important thing I've ever done. So I'm very happy about it. And it's an important part of who I am now. But at the same time, when you are needed all the time, you don't get the same chance to reflect. And I think what also happens for a lot of moms, and what I've seen in the results and in the survey, people start to feel really disconnected from their identity, right? And they kind of have an identity crisis, like, well, who am I now, right? Like, I used to be the person, like for me, it was reading, right? And I've kind of come back to reading mostly through audiobooks though. Right. But I was the person who, I was that kid who would take a stack of books home this high, and I was constantly reading. And then after kids, you're trying to hold a book in your hand, a baby's like pulling at it, pulling at you, pulling at your face, you give up. Or you sit down after your child's asleep with your book, and you fall asleep because you're so exhausted. So I've come back to reading through audiobooks. But, if you identify based on the things that you used to do, like I was a dancer for a long time. I danced competitively. Like I love to dance. I'm a big cook. I went to culinary school once upon a time. So I like to do certain things like that. And now it's like I'm making banana bread and birthday cakes. I'm not making like elaborate, I'm not making chocolate mousse, or I'm not making a caramel tower anymore. I'm making banana bread and birthday cake, and, things that you may have thought of as part of who you were and your personal brand, those things change. And I think that shift, you sometimes look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, who am I now? So I think that reconciliation is very hard for moms, especially in career. I know work-wise, I love this research and writing, and this is an important part of what I do. I also work full-time. But the way I used to show up at work, like I could just outwork everybody because I can work like a machine. And I would be the one who stayed the latest and worked the longest. And then so you have to then reevaluate, well, how can I be successful in my career now? And how can I differentiate myself now? And how can I grow and ascend in seniority now when I can't work the longest hours anymore? What does that look like? So I think those types of questions are hard, right? It takes a lot of reflection. and it takes time. And that's where I think the meditation and the journaling and having some space to do that really helps.
Well, first of all, let me just go back and say audiobooks rock. They're very underrated. I love audiobooks. I can't listen to them at night because they put me to sleep, but I can listen to them in the car. And that's when I like to have my moment. But what time do you get up in the morning, woman? You're talking about meditating and journaling or getting up early. What time? What's your schedule look like? Are you up at what time, in bed what time?
Yeah, well, so things have slid a little bit. Things are not in the greatest place right now. I was getting to bed by 10 for a little while there, and that was actually working out really well, because then I could wake up like 5, sometimes even 4:30, and I could feel good about that. Lately, I don't know. I think I'm like, something in me is like rebelling against going to bed early. Plus, I've been I started a new job. I've been busy at work. Like, I'm learning a lot of new things. So it's just been creeping later and later and later. So nowadays, I'd say on the later end, I'm waking up more like 5:30, 6. But I usually still have a little bit of space to go for a run and to do, if not a full meditation, a little bit of meditation. If I don't have time to journal, sometimes on the train, like on my way into work, I'll use that time to do it there. The audiobooks, I now wait till the afternoons. It was actually a woman a sister that I had interviewed, Kendra Bracken Ferguson. This was last year. And she talked about just like giving yourself that space to listen and keeping things quiet. And I really thought about that. So now the mornings, which are my most productive creative time, I'm not reading, I'm not listening to television. I do just a quick email check to make sure nothing's blown up. I'm not doing a lot of social media. I try to make that my creative space. And then I will listen to audiobooks, like starting, on my afternoon, like running out for lunch or my afternoon commute. And that's I use that time while I'm cooking dinner. I listen to audiobooks. Actually, right now, I'm listening to Toni Morrison's Source of Self-Regard, which is, just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But, I play it on speaker because my kids are usually in the other room. This is when I allow them to have screen time during the evening. It's like after 5:30, before we eat dinner, which is usually around 6:15. So it gives me like 30, 45 minutes cooking time. I'm in the kitchen. And that's when I will listen to more books. So I'm actually reading a lot, even though it's mostly audio.
Well, we had a comment. Camille said, as a young mom, she recalls having a meltdown because it took her 4 nights to get through a movie. I imagine she's like me. She fell asleep because you're so tired. There's no such thing as watching movies at night for me. It just put me to sleep. But I mean, this is pretty much typical for moms, right? I mean, we have a hard time staying up to do things at night. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and that's part of the identity thing. So Camille, don't worry. It will change. It will shift. I mean, I think for each of my kids, so for my daughter, this was just like last year. I think around age 4, like I noticed a real difference. Like suddenly there was one night, the whole family, we were all out, my husband was talking to someone, we were at a party. And I remember like, I looked down and I was eating and I was using 2 hands, and my son or my daughter, my son, no one was on my lap. They were like on the other side of the room. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're over there. I'm eating with my hands free. This is crazy. And it starts to happen around age 4. So when your kids are, at least for ours, it did. But if your kids are babies, if they're infants, you're going to sleep should be your priority. Don't feel bad about it. If you get in a movie once in a while, or maybe, my goodness, maybe you watch a movie during the day sometime or during lunch sometime or something like that. But it will shift. It's hard though.
Right. I have to watch movies in the daytime. I can't even go to a movie theater at night. So it's over. I might be nodding like,
exactly.
No. So.
Exactly.
You're right. Okay. So can we have it all? I mean, why not? We're working, we're managing children in the household, and some of us have side hustles too. It's like, can moms have it all, Leslie? Can we?
No. I think they have no. But I caveat that I think the having it all is really, it's a myth. And I was talking with some moms actually at the playground about this, maybe just a couple months ago. Like we started kind of having a conversation about work and working motherhood and what that really feels like. And the fact that no one really tells you about it until afterwards, and no one talks to you about it. And they're like, women came into my university and talked about work, and no one talked about this and how hard it is. And so it's kind of like this secret, this well-kept secret that you don't discover until afterwards. And if you've worked if you worked and you've really put energy into your career and that was part of your identity, suddenly having to really shift how you do it, what you can do, how aggressive you can be, that's huge. So I think what you can do, though, is you can have what's important to you. You can select a few things that are really important to you and create the terms under which that works for you. So, it like prioritizing that family time, prioritizing that time with our kids. I make sure during that time after work, before they go to bed, I'm not on a screen. I'm listening to Toni Morrison in the kitchen while I'm chopping, but they're sitting out, watching an iPad or, playing a game. So that doesn't feel like a time lost to them. But I make sure until they go to bed. And then on the weekends, like, unless they are getting screen time, which is allocated and it's monitored because they go crazy if they get too much of it. So that's happening. Like, then I will, check messages or write something. But otherwise, like, that's focus. And that was really important to me, that when it's their time, I'm in mom mode. And my work stuff and my writing and everything else, I kind of put that till after they're in bed. So I feel good about that. I travel a good amount for my job. I kind of gave myself a rule that I wouldn't travel more than like 2 nights. This is when they were babies. Now it's like more than 3 nights in a row without them. And I've brought them on trips because of that rule. So if I've had to go somewhere that's farther and longer, like an international trip, I've brought my kids with me. So that's kind of my brand of how I've reconciled the having it all, right? It's like, it's not really having it all. It's making tremendous trade-offs. There's sacrifice, but I'm carving out what I think is really important and doing it in a way that works for me.
What about hacks? We're all looking for those hacks, those mom hacks, those household hacks. Do you have any mom hacks that you can share with us to help us?
I have so many. Well, certainly the audiobooks are a huge one. And I'll mention, is it okay if I mention, I'm not affiliated with these companies by any means, but sure. Audible, which I love, but also your local library, there's an app called Libby. So most libraries are part of a network. So you can just, for free, like actually my Toni. So you did it for 3 weeks, like Audible. So you can listen to it on your phone or, on the go. I prep a lot ahead for meals. So that's
and it's free. Wait, hold on.
It's free. Yeah, it's completely free.
It's free, Libby? And it's called Libby.
Yep. You download the app and then you have to like log in using your library card. So if you're a member of your local library, they're probably part of this digital network. I think the network is called Minuteman. And you like log in with your library card, you set up a user ID, and it's free. So, I run out of Audible books all the time because you get like 1 a month. So I'm using Libby to supplement, and I'm using podcasts to supplement. And that's been amazing. It was another mom who told me about that. I do a lot of food hacks. I won't go into too many of them, but I have a whole system for meals and dinner. Even though I love to cook, I was running out of time and I was getting angry and I'd be like swearing at myself at like 9:00 at night trying to feed my kids because I made some elaborate dinner, which is crazy, right? So I was like, okay, dinner's going to be less interesting, but it's still going to be high quality. It's going to be healthy. So every weekend I will roast a chicken. I'll put like a pulled pork, like a pork shoulder in the slow cooker. I do something pretty large on weekends where I have more time. And then I'm making chicken burritos. I'm making chicken quesadillas. I'm making pork salad. I'm making pork sliders. Like I'm making, variations, pork and rice. It's like that is turning into, 3 dishes. So that way I'm not like starting from scratch every night. I cut all the vegetables for my kids. Like I want them to have at least 2 or 3 vegetables with every meal. And it's a thing for me, their nutrition. I cut like carrots and cucumbers a day or 2 ahead, and I like do double or triple chopping. and I just put them in like little, containers in the fridge so that I can, have that ready to go the next day. So those are a couple of food hacks. I actually have a friend had recommended to me, there's a whole bunch of brands that make these. It's like a customizable notebook. So basically the pages come out. So, you can pull the pages out and put it in like wherever you want. And I actually found that really helpful because I found myself in a regular notebook. I'm like writing my to-do list over and over and over again. And then I'm like 15 pages away from it and it's useless and I have to write it again. And so this way I keep like my to-do lists and like my key things like in the front of the notebook. And that's been a huge thing. It was another mom who shared that with me, and I kind of have fallen with that hack.
Share where you got that from and what's it called? Sure. Is it a brand name?
This one was the Martha Stewart brand, but there was also a couple of other brands. I went to Staples, and I just went into a Staples one afternoon on my lunch and just picked it up. And they have them on Amazon too. So the like if you just type in customizable notebook, there are several different brands that make them. And it was just like I needed to kind of upgrade how I organize things because things are just getting out of control. So that's been a good hack for me recently. There's some other things like with the, working out and exercise. I have a lot of hacks there. Like now, granted, it's not like the sexiest thing in the world, but I wear my running like sports bra, t-shirt. I don't wear like, the running pants, but I will wear the top part. So I'm all ready to go in the morning. I will put the pants like on my side of the bed so that I'm not going to wake up my husband. I will put on the running pants. I have everything like laid out where I need it so that it's a clean escape. If I had to actually get dressed and find my clothes in the dark and all that, then it just wouldn't happen. I also have, like I said, a plan B and a plan C. So if I can't run in the morning because my daughter's woken up, by myself, then I'll take her in the stroller because she's still small enough for that. If I can't do that, then I will bring everything to work and I will run like at lunchtime, so I kind of have like a backup plan so that I know that I'm getting that exercise in. And sometimes I'll go running for 10 minutes because I have no time that day. Like I have an early meeting or something's going on. And to me, it's like 10 minutes is better than no minutes. And I feel, it helps me feel better. It helps me manage stress. So those are just a few workout types of hacks. Whatever your workout thing is, there's like probably a system that will like tip the scale so you can make it happen.
You need a TV show called Organize My Life. Like, because I'm envious of people that are just organized. I manage, but I'm lucky if I put an outfit out for the next day. I mean, it's helpful for sure. I don't think about it, but sometimes I'm just so tired, I collapse at night. But yeah, like, Jan Van Zant has that show, You Need Organize My Life, not Fix My Life. Because I don't know how. Oh my God, I've already passed out as soon as I get home. So
I know. Okay. Well, there's one more though. Actually, you just made me think of one that's been really incredible. Like batching activities so that you're doing things in bulk and you're doing them at the right time. So if your creative time is in the morning, like I try almost as much as possible to schedule meetings in the afternoon so that I'm not sitting in a meeting or doing email or doing something that's very low brain activity for me during my most creative time. Like use that time to, build your business plan or write a presentation or solve world hunger, whatever it is that's your thing that you care about, like do that during your peak creative time. And then when your brain is mush, right, by the end of the day, like that's when you check your email and pay your bills and do those really kind of routine tasks that you can do with your eyes closed. So that's been a game changer for me too.
Wow. Okay. Now that's very helpful. And you mentioned the slow cooker. I just want to give slow cookers a shout out because they have saved me many a time, especially with, like you said, with those roasts and chickens and everything. We had a giveaway on our Twitter for a slow cooker. And then another mom that didn't win contacted me and said, she saw our article about slow cooking and some recipes and she couldn't afford one. And, not to brag or anything, so I haven't said this to anyone ever, but, I got her a slow cooker because she couldn't afford one. And she had like 4 kids. So, if I have it, I try to help. I'm not wealthy by any means, but, I know how it is to be a single mom and trying to get things done because I was a single mom for a good while there. So, but anyway,
No, that's
What
great.
does your group do? Tell us about that, and how does it help moms? And your website is Mom's Hierarchy of Needs.com.
Needs.com. Yes. So the focus has really been around like learning and sharing the learning around this journey to self-care and growth and managing stress. I think those are really the big pillars. And I try to interview incredible moms who are doing all the things that we're told we can't do. Like, oh, you can't start a business. Oh, you can't take on a big job. You can't travel. You can't write a book. You can't take care of yourself and your parents and your kids. I mean, and no, you can't do all of those things. And you can't do them all at the same time. But it's like society wants to tell us that we can't, right? And it's like, well, wait a minute. There's women who are figuring it out, and I learn a ton, and the moms in my community learn a lot every time. And I always ask them, like, okay, tell me what you're doing for self-care. Tell me how you did that. No. Not the answer up here that you give everybody else. Tell me how you really did that. How did you structure your time? How did you structure your day? Because there is some magic to it. And if we all talk about these things more, about stress, about challenges in our relationships and with our partners, and trying to get them to share the mental load, and and sometimes, sex, and, our kids, and, the things that we're kind of dealing with, if we're open about it and we help each other with it in a very non-judgmental way, I think the world becomes a better place. So that's the focus there. And I do a ton of research, including these studies around a big topic, and then I will write about that big topic for several months, like the mental load. And I wrote about like how it affects relationships, how it affects our presence with our kids, and by relationships, I mean with our partners or spouse, with, with our career. I wrote several pieces about mental load and how that affects your job. Because if you think about it, a lot of us are paid to think, right? We're paid to solve problems. So if you're thinking about, oh my gosh, did I order those shoes? Oh, wow, I have to return that to Zappos. I'm going to run out of time. Oh my gosh, my son, his hair looks so nappy. It's got to get cut. If you're thinking those things, and that's the tape loop running through your head all the time, all the things that are on your to-do list, like that crowds out space. And if you're being asked questions and making decisions all day long, like decision fatigue is a physical thing. It's a biological thing. You run out of decision-making capacity at a certain point. And if you shore all that up for like picking out shoes and figuring out what sippy cup to use, then when you have to do something that's stretching for yourself or for your career, or for your family in some other area, it's like that space, like there's no space left. So I think those are the types of things that I write about and research and try to get real data around, so we can all get, make our lives better.
Well, I'm looking at your pyramid, and I don't see where you put. Okay, healthy relationships. I was looking for sex. Where do we put that in? Where does that go?
I think that falls into healthy relationships.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I had this is a whole other. I wrote about it actually. I had a conversation with a dad. He's a stranger. We just happened to meet on the train, and we ended up talking for an hour and a half about just all the difficult things that I would never be able to talk about with my own husband. Don't tell him. Shh. But it's like, just, like sharing household responsibilities and his point of view. And then I told him, well, here's what your wife's probably thinking. He's like, I do the laundry, and it doesn't seem to, like I heard men are sexy when they do the laundry. And I'm like, well, yeah, they are. And he's like, well, I'm not seeing that. And I'm like, well, are you really doing the laundry? He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, no. Really doing the laundry is, he's like, I fold. I said, no. Doing the laundry is noticing when there's no detergent, noticing when you have to buy more. That's putting the laundry in, that's folding it, that's making sure everything is there, that's making sure the laundry area is clean afterward. Like that is doing the laundry, right? So you're doing this little slice and thinking, oh my gosh, my wife should be so happy. And it's like, well, no, she's still, and not being reminded to do it. I mentioned that. So she's still keeping that on her mental to-do list, right? Like that's a burden. Like that's taking up space that she could use in her brain for something else. So I think those types of conversations and having awareness, like self-awareness for what our stress triggers are, what's kind of happening to our time, what's kind of happening in our daily lives, and then also what do we have to do to fix it. There's a woman, I interviewed her a couple of times, Tiffany Dufu. I don't know if you ever read her book, Drop the Ball. She's a sister also. She's a sister. She's amazing. She writes about, basically, it took her like maybe 2.5 years to get her husband to share equally all of the housework, all of the childcare. And the book is hilarious because she's talking about all the steps and missteps and arguments and everything that it took to get to that point. But she did it in over 2 years. And now, granted, I haven't done this yet. My home is something we work on all the time. But I'm like, wow, I'm interviewing someone who's actually done this. And so many of us are trying to do this. Like, those are the types of tips and tools that if we share with each other, we get stronger.
Right. No, that's absolutely great. Well, we definitely ran out of time, but it was so good talking to you. I want to know, if there's one thing you want our moms to know, what is it?
Self-care is important. It's not optional. It's not something for when you have time. It's something that you deserve, and what's good for you is good for your family. We're living in, I think, really stressful times for moms of color. There's a lot of conversations we have that not every mom has. There's a lot of things that are on our minds that not every mom is thinking about. And so, like, be good to yourself, be kind to yourself, go on out there, do what you need to do. If you have a bad day, it's okay, right? There's another day. So I see that, I hear that. A lot of us don't feel seen and heard. A lot of us feel invisible and visible at the same time, and it's very tough. So cheers to all of you parents who are just doing it every day.
Right. Thank you so much, Leslie. She is the founder of Mom's Hierarchy of Needs. I'm going to put this up here so you guys can see it. So that's her website. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation.
We loved having you. And no, thank you. And thank you all for listening and participating. If you were watching, and if you're listening to this later, please make sure you share this. This is some good advice for moms. It is BACKTALK by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, a podcast talk show for parents. Now, if you missed part of the show, don't worry. You can just wait a few minutes and click the replay of this podcast in this very same box that I'm talking to you now in. And you can also share it right here on Facebook. So let's get the words out. It's Mom's Weekend here at BACKTALK. And our next episode is tomorrow, October 12th at 11 a.m. Pacific time and 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And it's about millennial moms. And so we're going to find out what's the difference between millennial moms. And we're going to see, like, what, there's some generational differences. I am not one. I wish I could say that I was that young, but I'm not. But we're going to discuss also the guilt that we sometimes have about leaving the children and going to work, while some of us run away to get to work just to get away. So stay tuned. And you'll see the post for that broadcast on our Facebook page at Black Parenting One. Put that in the search bar, or Successful Black Parenting, it'll come up. And be sure to tag any friends in the post. And the cool thing about it is that when you see it, hit the little get reminder button so that you don't forget to tune in. It'll automatically pop up for you. And you can always ask questions live in the chat, which is below our box where you see us talking in the Facebook comment section. And if your question gets picked, I'll post it live on air like we did for Camille today. One more thing. Don't forget to follow us too on Twitter. And I mentioned Facebook. They're both at Black Parenting One. And on Instagram, we're Black Parenting Magazine. Our website is successfulblackparenting.com. And it's full of great content to help you thrive and not just survive as a parent. So be sure to rate our podcast. And until next time, take care of yourself, because you never know when the world will need you. Goodbye.
Thank you.